you drive today?
20 minutes.
20 minutes, okay.
Best time to leave.
Excuse me?
The best time to leave is about 7:35 we leave and we're here for like 7:55.
Yes. Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. Alhamdulillah, I'm just waiting this to open because the internet is a bit slow, so it will open straight away. Okay, there we are. What was the last thing we read last time, or what we spoke about? Was the tayammum, right? Yeah. Okay, alhamdulillah. MashaAllah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم صلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make this beneficial and to teach us everything we are in need of, because we definitely live in a time where the majority of Muslims, the majority without any doubt, they perform actions of worship without ever having read a book or ever having been taught how to do things. So they perform wudu, but they were maybe never taught how to perform the wudu. They perform the hajj, but they were not taught how to perform the hajj. The same with fasting and the same with everything. And the Muslims, the problem is they think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Ghafur Rahim, and that's for sure. But when we worship Allah without knowledge, while we have the means to gain knowledge, then our worship will be rejected. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, like Aisha radiallahu anha mentioned in Sahih Bukhari, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man amila amalan laysa alayhi amruna fahuwa rad." Yani, if someone performs an action not according to our method, then his action will not be accepted. So, and of course, when we say according to our method or methodology, then we mean what the scholars understand from the Quran and from the Sunnah, which is another disease. People never having studied want to talk about something they didn't study. Can you imagine? Muslims speak about hadith, they speak about fiqh, they speak about everything, tafsir, the Quran, the Sunnah, and when you ask them, where did you study? I didn't. But they wouldn't talk about anything else that they didn't study. They would say, I don't know, I didn't study this. But when it's about deen, all of a sudden becomes the cheapest thing ever. Like today, the Prophet ﷺ spoke about a time where people will write a lot. Subhanallah. And this is a sound hadith. He says, yani, knowledge will disappear. He said, and then ignorance will come down on the face of the earth. And he said, ثُمَّ يَظْهَرُ الْقَلَمِ, and then the pen will appear. Subhanallah. If you look at this hadith, knowledge disappearing, ignorance coming down, and then people writing. What will they write? Ignorance. So this is why we need to revive the thought amongst Muslims that without knowledge we are not allowed to talk about the deen, exactly as you are not allowed to perform an operation upon anybody if you're not a surgeon. So this is one of the most important things that we need to know, is like back in the days the Muslims would not speak without knowledge. Like if you, for example, 50 years, 100 years ago in Morocco, if somebody would speak without knowledge, they would just take him to the qadi. They would just take him to the judge and say, this person is a fattan, yani creating chaos. Why? Because he is speaking about knowledge without knowledge. So this is why yani, our scholars made it very clear that talking without knowledge is haram. And this is what Allah Jalla wa Ala says in the Quran. Yani, Allah says in the Quran that He made many things haram, and at the end He said, وَأَن تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ, and that you say about Allah that of which you have no knowledge. Allah made it haram. He says, and it is haram for you to talk without knowledge. In another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do not describe with your tongues هَذَا حَلَالٌ وَهَذَا حَرَامٌ لِتَفْتَرُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ الْكَذِبِ إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَفْتَرُونَ عَلَى اللَّهِ الْكَذِبَ لَا يُفْلِحُونَ. Do not say this is halal and that is haram, because eventually you will end up lying about Allah, and those who lie about Allah will never succeed. Done. So why is it so difficult? When the Prophet ﷺ was asked what the reason is for the majority of people to go to hell, he took his tongue between his index finger and thumb and he said this. And this, talking. And sometimes we can say things, we can declare something haram for people while it was not haram. Or we say it's halal while it was haram. What are we going to do when they leave us and we never see them again? So if you want to know how courageous people are, false courage, just ask a question on the internet, on your page. Naam? Is this disturbing?
No.
You're sure?
Yeah.
Okay. So just ask them on the internet a question. For examples, am I allowed to cut my nails on Friday? Just a question which doesn't make any sense, does it? Am I allowed to? You will see all of them giving a fatwa. Or you say, is it allowed to eat a worm? Is it allowed to eat a worm that crawls out of an apple? I once asked this question. Hundreds of replies, all mashaykh. Was like Ibn Taymiyyah and like Imam al-Ghazali talking all together. Everybody copying, pasting and this and that. So I always say, if you want to know whether you have knowledge, imagine yourself that internet dies today. Ya Rabbi, if only internet were to die. Nobody could talk about knowledge anymore. You will have to go back to the mosque to learn your deen. True or not? And true scholars, you would be able to distinguish between true scholars and fake scholars. A scholar is not in need of of internet. He will have a book in front of him to read and then he will explain it. And this is why Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah, when he was traveling, you know the story. The Alchemist of Happiness, it's on YouTube, the life of Imam al-Ghazali with some commentary of Hamza Yusuf, Shaykh Hamza Yusuf and so forth. Anyway, so one of the things is that when robbers took away his chest, we say a chest, a treasure chest, he ran after them and he said, please can I have my treasure chest back? And they said, why? And he said, because all my knowledge is in there. I've written everything down, like about 10,000 pages or whatever. And then the robber just threw it back, to Imam al-Ghazali, and he said, what is knowledge worth if it isn't in your heart and your mind, if you don't memorize it? And then Imam al-Ghazali says, I knew that this was a sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I had to memorize my knowledge. So I went home and it took him about, 2 or 3 years. He says, and it took me about 2 or 3 years to memorize 10,000 or 12,000 pages. And then I knew I was ready. Today, people can't even quote one hadith. People tell you what to do. Don't do this, sister, that's haram. Don't do that, brother, that's haram. The way you look, I don't like it. The way you speak, I don't like it. They have something to say about everything, but in reality, they are just frustrated people. And people that don't like other people not to be like them. That is what's going on now in the Muslim world. Like you see somebody who does something that you don't like, you become frustrated. But now through religion, and this is why we say many people, if religion was to be taught in a correct way, maybe less Muslims would choose for Islam, because there would not be place for their ego. And now very often we are attracting wrong people to Islam. Look at the people of ISIS. A lot of them are converts. Like myself, I'm a convert. Not from ISIS, but like myself, meaning a convert. And how did they end up like this? That they started loving chopping off heads and hands and throwing people from buildings. This is my Islam. Yes, that's your Islam, but it's not Islam. So if we were to explain Islam in a correct way, we would attract the correct people. But because the way we present Islam is very often crooked, we will attract crooked people. You understand what I mean? And this is why the Prophet ﷺ, when he spoke about the end of days, and he said, and then you will be humiliated. They said, أَمِنْ قِلَّتِنَا نَحْلُ يَوْمَئِذٍ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. He said, is it because we will be little in number, small in number that day, Ya Rasulullah? He said, no, you will be a lot. Like the rain. And in the narration he said, no, you will be like the foam on the ocean. And it comes and goes. There's no benefit in it whatsoever, if you understand what I mean. So the Prophet ﷺ, in another narration, he said, no, it's حُبُّ الدُّنْيَا وَكَرَاهِيَةُ الْمَوْتِ. He said, the reason why you will be humiliated is for your excessive love for dunya and because you don't like to die. Meaning not liking to die is that you didn't prepare anything for your afterlife. so you don't desire for your afterlife. You know, if you prepared your holiday, you're starting to what? To look forward to that holiday. But somebody not going on holiday, is he looking forward to it? Somebody says, oh, I'm really looking forward going to Mexico. I'm looking forward going to, I don't know where, to Syria in the good times. And then you ask him, oh, so are you going? No. Why are you looking forward then? And this is the same thing with the journey to the akhirah. We don't look forward to it. Why? Because we didn't buy the ticket. It's so simple, you know. We didn't buy the ticket, we didn't prepare, we don't have the baggage, we don't have the luggage with us. So why should we be looking forward to it? And this is why when they came to Hamad ibn Salama and they asked him, what is the difference between us and the Sahaba? He said the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they were looking forward to leaving this life and moving to the next. And we are looking forward to stay here and we dislike moving to the next. He said, well, the houses, yani the lives of the Sahaba in this dunya were empty. And their houses in the hereafter were filled. And your houses in the dunya, in this life, are filled, and your houses in the hereafter are empty. And there is no such a thing as a person with a sound mind wanting to leave something filled for something empty. So we have everything here. But what do we have there? Because entering paradise is thanks to the mercy of Allah. You don't earn it. Whatever you do, you don't earn it. It's Allah, like the Prophet ﷺ was asked, said, not even you, Ya Rasulullah, will enter paradise thanks to your deeds. He said, وَلَا أَنَا. He said, not even me. إِلَّا أَنْ يَتَغَمَّدَنِي اللَّهُ بِرَحْمَتِهِ. Unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is merciful for me. So now when Jibreel came to the Prophet ﷺ, he said, I saw Jibreel and he asked me to tell you that the soil of Jannah is what? What's the opposite of barren? Fertile. The soil of Jannah is fertile, but it is for people to plant the seeds. Otherwise you won't cultivate. So you don't want to end up in an empty Jannah, do you? So this is why we need to prepare. And one of these ways to prepare our place in Jannah is fiqh. Very often people disconnect fiqh from spirituality. Well, the biggest goal is not to be spiritual. The biggest goal is to worship Allah correctly and to have a good behavior with people and to have correct transactions. Because as we said before, the majority of transactions that the Muslims do today are not correct. So we need to learn this. Okay, so this is why we are doing what we are doing. You remember we spoke about the Mas'h al-Khuffayn, wiping over the socks. You remember it? Were you present? For a part, yeah? So we are going to read this again, but like in very brief. Okay, so we're just reading it. I'm not going to explain it. He says, وَيَجُوزُ لِمَنْ وَجَبَ عَلَيْهِ الْوُضُوء لَلْغُسْلُ وَيُشْتَرَطُ لُبْسُهُمَا عَلَى طَهَارَةٍ كَامِلَةٍ. He says, it is permissible for someone to wipe over his or her socks when he is in need of wudu, not of ghusl. So when someone needs to perform ghusl, you can't, just do what? Wipe over your socks. Then you need to take the socks off. Being ghusl, being in a state where it is required for you to what? To perform the major washing. He says, وَيُشْتَرَطُ لُبْسُهُمَا عَلَى طَهَارَةٍ كَامِلَةٍ. And the condition is that you put on the socks after having performed a complete wudu. So your wudu needs to be complete, then you put on your socks. It's not required to put them on immediately after your wudu. As long as you wear them after your wudu and that you didn't annul your wudu through anything which annuls your wudu. So that's clear as well. He says, وَيَمْسَحُ الْمُقِيمُ يَوْمًا وَلَيْلًا. And a resident is allowed to wipe for a period of 24 hours. وَالْمُسَافِرُ ثَلَاثَةَ أَيَّامٍ. And the traveler, 72 hours. So the resident 24 and the traveler 72. He says, عَقِيبَ الْحَدَثِ بَعْدَ اللُّبْسِ. And it starts counting from the very moment that you break your wudu, after having put on the socks. So if now, for example, you made wudu, you put on your socks at 8 o'clock, and you don't lose your wudu until 8 in the morning because you didn't sleep, and then you lose your wudu at 8 in the morning, until when can I wipe then? Until 8 the next morning. Because it starts counting from the very first moment that you lose your wudu. Is that clear? Okay. So now, then he continues and says, وَالْمَسْحُ عَلَى ظَاهِرِهِمَا خُطُوطًا بِالْأَصَابِعِ We wipe over the upper part and not the lower part of the sock, and we do it khututan, in lines with the fingers. So that will be like 3 fingers. You go from your toes upwards to the height of your ankles. He says, وَفَرْضُهُ مِقْدَارُ ثَلَاثَةِ أَصَابِعٍ مِنَ الْيَدِ And the fard is that you wipe yani the surface of 3 fingers. So 3 fingers. He says, وَالسُنَّةُ أَنْ يَبْدَأَ مِنْ أَصَابِعِ الرِّجْلِ إِلَى السَّاقِ Yani he says, and the sunnah is that you start with your toes and you work upwards to your what? To your shin, right? You're not going to wash your shin, but towards that direction, right? He says, وَسُنَّةُ أَنْ يَبْدَأَ مِنْ أَصَابِعِ الرِّجْلِ إِلَى السَّاقِ Then he says, وَلَا يَجُوزُ عَلَى خُفٍّ فِيهِ خِرْقٌ أَوْ خَرْقٌ يَبِينُ مِنْهُ مِقْدَارُ ثَلَاثَةِ أَصَابِعٍ مِنْ أَصَابِعِ رِجْلِ الصِّغَارِ He says, and you are not allowed to wipe over the socks if the socks expose or have a hole in it which exposes the surface of 3 small toes. Your toes, right? So if the surface is equal to 3 small toes in one sock, you are no longer allowed to wear to wipe over it. If it is 2 toes, the surface of two toes in one sock and of 1 toe in the other sock, then there's no problem. Why? Because the surface of 3 would be in 1 sock on its own. Is that clear? Okay. He then says, وَتُجْمَعُ خُرُوقُ كُلِّ خُفٍّ عَلَى حِدَتِهِ Yani, meaning what I just explained, each sock is separate and you don't add the holes of each sock to the other. وَيَجُوزُ الْمَسْحُ عَلَى الْجُرْمُوقِ فَوْقَ الْخُفٍّ And you are allowed to wipe over something which you put over your, what? Over your sock. As long as you put it on while you are in a state of wudu. So if you're not in a state of wudu and you didn't wipe yet over your sock, and then you put these things over it and then you wipe, then that would be correct. Is that clear? So say it again. Like I put on my socks. Now I break my wudu. I put on shoes that cover also my ankles and everything. Then now I'm not allowed to wipe over them. Why? Because I'm not in state of wudu. But if I would have wiped over the socks and then put them on, then I have no problem. You see? So, then he says, وَيَجُوزُ عَلَى الْجَوْرَبَيْنِ إِذَا كَانَ ثَخِينَيْنِ You are allowed to wipe over non-leather socks if they are thick socks. So very often we would refer to them as Norwegian socks. Do you know Norwegian socks? Look them up. In winter, you never get cold, Omar. Especially you, who are often outside. Are you often outside? Yeah, okay. So especially you, when you're often outside, you put them on. The problem is when you put them on, it's very difficult to get into your shoes. So you need some good shoes. But Norwegian socks, for example. أو مجلدين أو منعلين. So some of the socks, they are leatherish on the bottom, but the rest is a sock, for example. You saw that? So the bottom is leather and the rest isn't. So, and the top is leather and so forth. So whatever it is, if they are thick or they are the bottom is leather, then there is no problem to wipe over them. So as long as they say that the water doesn't immediately get to your skin, like you have these thin socks, a drip of water falls down on your foot, you feel it immediately on your skin. That would never be allowed to perform the wudu on. Like I think my socks, I don't know, I'm going to try. So just to show you, may I? I won't wet in the mosque.
Yeah, that's fine if you stay on the waterproof mat.
The waterproof, yes. So you can wipe over the waterproof mat if you were to. Yeah, it's immediately. I feel it immediately on my skin. Immediately, like, oh, it's really wet now. It's not the end of the world, is it? So I wouldn't be allowed to wipe over this sock. Why? Because the water immediately went through it to my skin. Other socks that are a bit thicker, you put some water, like try it out. If it doesn't go to your skin immediately, then you're allowed to what? Somebody else wants to try? No? Nobody? SubhanAllah. Yes.
So, do you know when you're wiping, you're not, are your hands just wet and you're...
Yes, you moisten your hands.
Yes, that volume of water...
No, that doesn't go through. But the thing is, the standard for the sock is that the water doesn't go through your sock immediately.
So that's the test. So
that's the test.
You do that
when you wipe, you won't know.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
So you have to
yes.
understand it.
Yes. So some of the sport socks, for example, they are okay. I always think it's intriguing, like when we start talking about socks in a mosque, like it's like a sock is a sock, just leave me alone, you know. But the thing is, this is a part of our deen, and when you choose for your deen, you choose for every part of it. We are not cherry picking in our deen. You know, like, okay, I don't want to know this, just leave me alone. Socks are socks. No, socks are not socks. I'm sorry. The Prophet ﷺ made it clear what they should be. Okay, so what we are not allowed to do is to wipe over gloves. Okay, so you wipe over your gloves. You can't do qiyas, analogy. Now I'm here, it's only there. Okay. وَيَنْقُضُهُ مَا يَنْقُضُ الْوُضُوء. Yes.
Can I just double check?
Yes, of course.
A tight's okay, as in because of the length. It's
What do you mean?
Trouser.
What do you mean tights?
So they completely cover your whole leg.
Yes, as long as the water, like a drip of water, when it comes on the surface of your foot, doesn't get immediately to your skin, then that's okay. Yes, that's okay. That's no problem. وَيَنْقُضُهُ مَا يَنْقُضُ الْوُضُوء. Yani everything that which breaks the wudu will also break your state of being in wudu with your socks on. Okay, so that would be the same. So وَنَزْعُ الْخُفْ, taking off your sock. Naam. وَمُضِيِّ الْمُدَّةِ, and passing of the time, yani doesn't give you the permission anymore to wipe over your socks. And you should then, if you take off your socks and you're in a state of wudu, when the time elapses, so you were in wudu, like time elapses at 20:25, but now I'm in wudu. So the only thing I have to do then is take off my socks, wash my feet, put my socks back on. Why? Because I myself was in wudu. And this was actually protecting the wudu of my feet, if you can say it like that. So the only thing that is not in wudu are my feet. So I take the socks off and then I wipe over my feet. I wash my feet and put the socks back on. Is that clear? And then I have wudu again. And people say, why would you do this? Well, like in extreme cold, for example, even without the reason you're allowed to do this, but you have more ajr, more reward, if you perform your wudu all over again. But it wouldn't be incorrect. Okay? So he says, and also taking off the socks, yani will no longer allow you to wipe over these socks if you take them off, not because the time has elapsed. So what I always do is this here. If you have a look, I'm sorry to do this. So the moment the sock is here, then my wudu is no longer valid. Now I can no longer wipe over my what? Over my feet. Because it has passed the ankle, and now they don't consider this as you wearing the sock. But if you just go like this, for example, some people think when I go like this, I scratch here, and you see a bit of my ankle, that's no problem. Okay? It's just scratching and it goes back up. So that's no problem. These, I don't want to show myself socks, you can't wipe over them. You know that I don't want to show myself socks? It's when you wear these low sneakers. You know, you wear these socks and you don't want them to show because it looks more cool for you not to show the socks. So you're allowed to wear them, it's halal. They're just socks, right? But you are not allowed to wipe over these, I don't want to show myself socks. Okay? And the reason why is because they don't cover the entire surface which is supposed to be washed during the wudu. How do we call these I don't want to show myself socks?
I think they call it anklet. Trainer socks? No. Invisible socks?
What?
Invisible socks?
Invisible socks. I thought that my one was better. Like, does anybody know the name?
I've heard them saying ankle.
There is an
socks,
ankle socks.
anklet,
Trainer socks as well.
trainer socks.
Invisible socks are the ones.
Oh, that exists.
that-
Invisible
yeah,
socks.
But they're the female ones where you can't see them.
Liner socks? Are the
Okay, you know the socks I mean.
Yes.
Khalas. You wear low sneakers, the sock doesn't appear. That one. So you're not allowed to wipe over it, even if it's made out of 20 layers of leather. Why? Because this sock doesn't cover your entire foot, the ankles included. Is that clear? Okay. Then he says, فَإِذَا مَضَتِ الْمُدَّةُ نَزَعَهُمَا وَغَسَلَ رِجْلَيْهِ. When the time elapses, you take off your socks and you wash your feet, as I said. وَخُرُوجُ الْقَدَمِ إِلَى السَّاقِ نَزْعٌ. Yani, when your heel is shown, then what? Exactly. مسح مسافر ثم أقام بعد يوم وليلتين نزع. And when a traveler travels for 2 days and then he's a resident, then he's no longer allowed to wipe over the socks and not even to pray with these socks because the time has elapsed, you see? So because a traveler, we said, has 72 hours, but from the moment he's a resident, he needs to look at the time which has already elapsed. If it is more than 24 hours, because that's the max for a resident, then he needs now to what? To wash his feet or perform the entire wudu and take the socks off. He's no longer allowed to consider himself in a state of wudu. Is that clear? Now, if the resident leaves after 23 hours and becomes a musafir, a traveler, then now he can go on until he completes 72 hours, the 23 included. Okay, so we build on what we have already, on the time that has already elapsed when we turn from a traveler into a resident or resident into a traveler. Okay. He says, ولا يجوز المسح على العمامة والقلنسوة والبرقع والقفازين. يعني, he says, you are not allowed to wipe over your imama, turban, and not over your little hat, no? And not over the burqa. We know what a burqa is, right? Not over burqa and not over gloves. So now the people say, but the Prophet ﷺ, he wiped over his turban. The Hanafis say, well, a part of his head was exposed, a fourth of his head, and his imama was here. They wouldn't have the habit to undo their imama. You know, imama takes a lot of time to wrap around your head, especially in those days between 7 and 11 meters. Yani you would have people walk around you and putting it around. So you don't want to mess that one up, right? So you just say, okay, just to the back. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he wiped over his head, but also over his turban. So now people say this means that you can wipe over a turban. We say no. He wiped over a fourth of his head, and then over the turban was just the habit of continuing. But it was not the part of wudu. You understand? So that would be the same if my head was exposed until here. I would now wipe, but I would continue over my hat. Just because, you know, I'm used to perform this. So we say this is not a proof as Hanafis that one can wipe over the turban. Yes.
So I've seen some sisters that wipe over their hijab buckets. They can't do that, can they?
They can't do this. They can't. We can find this in the Maliki fiqh, but in the Maliki fiqh they speak about the hijab al-raqiq, meaning the hijab which is the inner hijab. Like what women would do, they would wear a hijab back in the days. Like sometimes now also women, they have two layers. One which they attach here, and then the other one which they wear. But back in the day, but now this tissue of the inner hijab today is almost the same material as the upper layer. So that wouldn't be allowed. But they would have a net now that would keep it together. That would be referred to as an inner hijab. You see? And this is what they would wipe over. So now people think, oh, I can wipe over the hijab. You have scholars who don't hold on to what the madhab says in everything, not in anything, in everything, like Siddiq Hassan Khan, yani in Rawdatul Nadiya, he said that it's allowed to do it over the hijab, and then he referred to Ibn Taymiyyah, and then we find that Muhammad bin Salih al-Uthaymeen rahimahullah in his Sharh al-Mumti' ala Zad al-Mustaqni', and he's more the Salafi approach, although that he explains Hanbali books, he also says that it's permissible. You see? But that would be the minority of the minority of the minority saying this, and it wouldn't be a strong opinion. Is that clear? So it has been said, but it's not a strong opinion. It's not the default. Okay. So then, وَقَبْلَ ذَلِكَ وَلَا يَجُوزُ الْمَسْحُ عَلَى الْعِمَامَ وَالْقُلُنْسِ and so forth. So we explained that one. وَيَجُوزُ عَلَى الْجَبَائِرِ وَإِنْ شَدَّهَا عَلَى غَيْرِ وُضُوءٍ فَإِنْ سَقَطَتْ عَنْ بُرْءٍ بَطَلَ. No. So now what we have, it says, and we are allowed to wipe over gyps. Do we say? No, not gyps. What do you, a plaster? No?
Yeah.
When you break your arm.
Cast.
Is the material cast?
That's
No,
plastic.
it's called a cast.
No, I was referring to the material.
It's a mesh
Paper
type
mache.
material. Mesh with plaster on
It's
it.
a plaster.
So what I said was correct, right?
It's like a cloth, and then when they wet it, it becomes like clay, like sort of hardens.
I'm Googling.
The problem is that also we use a plaster for like what Americans call a band-aid.
So is it not gyps?
We've never heard that.
That's the Belgian thing.
Okay, look it up, please. Ask Shaykh, Google
Like
How do you
gypsum.
spell it?
gypsum. No.
Gypsum. It's similar.
Gypsum
Plaster.
cement.
It's made from plaster or fiberglass.
Okay, so when I said plaster, it was correct, right?
It's correct, but also like I said, we use plaster for band-aid as well.
Orthopedic plaster.
Orthopedic plaster.
Or you could say plaster cast.
You can.
Okay, so plaster cast. MashaAllah. So we are allowed. So you cut this, right? No. So we are allowed to wipe over plaster cast, right? So now the thing is, with the Shafi'iyah, we have a bit of a problem. No, not we have a problem with them, but it's a bit difficult. They say, if you wear your plaster cast, your orthopedic plaster, now, then you need to wear it or put it on when you are in the state of wudu. Now when you're in the state of wudu. So they say when you put it on and you're not in wudu, then all your wudus are invalid and you need to make up all these prayers. Because you wipe over something but you're not in the state of wudu. That means when you're in an ambulance, for example, and they're driving you and they say, please let me perform wudu. And you say, they say, why? I said, so that's problematic. So what we say is, yani, when you can't wipe over something because it's burnt, for example, we're not going to make wudu and tayammum. We are just going to make wudu and we consider the damaged part of our body to what? To be not present. Now, exactly like if someone's forearm would be amputated, then he wouldn't perform wudu, would it? He would only be obliged to wash that which can be washed. So we're going to say the same thing, that if we have, for example, our forearm has been burned or whatever, or they're been cut because we jumped through glass, escaping from a fire or whatever, so then you don't have to wipe over it. You're just going to perform wudu and you consider this to be inexistent. Does that make sense? Okay. Is this clear? That's all we have to know. Easy, isn't it? So now we don't have a pen, do we? No.
You need a pen?
Yeah, maybe. Okay, thank you very much.
You need paper?
I can do, it's for knowledge, it's okay. Okay, paper is good. And some caviar, please. Is caviar halal?
Fish eggs. Or mammal. In the water.
The right answer is we don't know, so we can't.
Alright.
Yes. Good. So don't eat them until we get to that chapter.
And with these, what we're just learning about the moment and wudu, etc. And
Yes.
we talked about the time when
Thank you.
the 2 hours. in current practical terms,
Yes.
for us living in this country,
No.
you know, for us to be without water would be extremely.
The reason is not because we are without water. The reason is because Allah loves us and wants to make it easy for us.
No, but I accept that. But I'm just trying to ask: are they, or could you please give us some practical examples of where you would consider sort of
When you're at
24 hours or 37.
When you're in the office,
Yeah, I started doing it.
and that's a practical example where, or even in McDonald's or wherever people go, then you know if a Muslim was there, you know if he wanted to pray, because it's like wet all over the floor. And I'm not meaning inside of the toilet, I'm meaning at the sink, right? So this is very unrespectful. So then we can just wipe over our socks, and with the conditions, of course, instead of wetting all the place. So that would be an example, for example. And we don't need a reason. We are just allowed to do it. You know? And we shouldn't not accept ease when it has been given, because the Prophet ﷺ made it clear that Allah loves it when you use the ease that He gives you. Allah loves this. It's like when you don't do it, it's like, Rabbi, I don't want your present. You see? So we don't need a reason. Okay, my arm is cut. That's my arm. You see? My arm is cut. Okay? So now, when my arm is cut, let us say I just have one wound. You see this? Can you see that as well? Okay. My arm is wounded. So now, when my arm is wounded in a certain way that no water should come to it, right? Then our scholars, they made it clear that you are going to cover it, but how much are you going to cover? What you are going to cover is the wound itself, and you cover the space which would be painful for you to put any pressure on. Because sometimes here's the wound, but the pain would also be if you touch it here, isn't it? So they say you cover the wound itself and also the surface where you experience pain due to the wound. More than this would invalidate your wudu. So what are we going to do? We are going, if we have this, we're going to wash around it. Because this, remember, is like non-existent. But we're not going to do tayammum because of this. We're just going to wash there where it is possible, and this is sufficient. Is that clear? Okay. Now you have two wounds. So now, for example, your pain is right in the middle. You see? So this here, you have pain until there. Okay? And here you have pain until here. But there is a very small, tiny part where there is no pain between the two wounds. Our scholar says, please. They said, please, just do one thing over it. Don't try to, with this, how do you call this, ear cottons? Do we call it? Ear what? Earbuds. Where you clean your, So you don't have to take these earbuds and go between, just one thing and done. Because some people say, but I don't feel the pain here. It's just like half a centimeter. Scholars say, just make it one. Okay? So, but if you have two wounds, so that's the same with a plaster caster. Or a cast? Plaster cast. Like if now, sometimes your hand is broken and it's only needed until here. From a what? A medical point of view. Doctor says, you know what? Let us do it to here. It looks cool. People can write their name, and that's what they say, right? If now, from a medical point of view, this much is not needed, then you have to demand for it not to be there. If he says that's the only way we can do it, even if it's not needed, then not. Okay? So, but they can't put more than needed from a medical point of view. Okay? So, but you can't demand, make it less if it is needed from a medical point of view. Because medicine here overrules your comprehension of what deen is. Because our scholars, they say that the doctors know what is needed, not you. Okay? So when the plaster is here, and until here is needed and there is more, then this more should be removed. Don't remove it yourself. But ask the doctor and you say, remove this please. Or,
So would you ask then, is all of the class needed?
yes, you ask. Because they don't, if there are non-Muslim doctors, they don't think about it and they don't do it with a bad intention, is it? They just say, okay, that's easier, just let it do like, let us do it like that. But you ask them, you say, is it needed this much? Because they can, when they put it, because first there is like glass fiber, or what do we call it? Fiberglass. And they can actually choose how far it goes, you see? They can take away from it and so much more. So you ask, you say, until where is it needed? And a bit more is okay. What is needed and a bit more. So like this, for example, no problem. But if they go all the way, then that's not, then your wudu that you will then perform will not be correct. This is if you have a hand in it and if you can choose it. Like if you were unconscious and they did it, you know, they're not going to now, you know. All right, yes.
I have a question, but you probably get to it when you cover fasting. So when
I will.
Okay.
But ask anyway.
So it's, if you've got a terminal illness and Ramadan is around,
Yes.
now and you believe you can still fast, but doctors are advising you that you shouldn't. What happens in that situation? Are you
Okay. Like, not every terminal illness, yani, or fasting doesn't have a negative effect on every terminal illness. No? Sometimes there might be a terminal sickness or illness for which fasting can be good, for example, whatever it may be. So what we are going to ask is whether me fasting has an effect on me, on my disease. Not does it make me weaker,
okay?
but does it have an effect on my disease, like either speeding up your biological calculated death by the doctors, for example, or does it have an effect on your medication, that you need to take your medication on a full stomach, not on an empty one during the day? You need to ask this. And if it has a negative effect on you, on your disease, then you're even not allowed to fast. Then it becomes haram for you to fast. Is that clear? But not every terminal disease,
So it depends on the disease.
it depends. Yeah.
So even something like cancer or
I can't say. Like for example, diabetes, according to some it's very good to fast with diabetes. The only problem is when you have to take insulin or glycoside, which brings your sugar level down, and you do that while not eating, then you might get into a coma, for example. So it all depends. If the doctor says take it before you eat in the morning and after you eat in the evening, and nothing will happen to you and it won't make you sicker, then you have to do it. Then it becomes obligatory even while you have diabetes to fast. Because the doctors Because the doctors have said so. Now, they say that the doctors need knowledge of medicine, but also knowledge of Islam. And they need to have taqwa. So knowledge of Islam is not sufficient. They need to be people who have taqwa. Yani they fear Allah Jalla wa Ala in two ways. Because when we hear the word fear now, we say, oh, otherwise he will say too quickly, don't fast. But it is also wrong to say too quickly, fast. That would also be a lack of taqwa. Because taqwa is taking care of people in this case. So a person who has knowledge of the deen, or knowledge of medicine, and who has his portion of taqwa, they are the ones that decide. Now, does this mean when the only doctor available is a non-Muslim doctor from NHS, like will we now say, oh no, his opinion is invalid? We're not saying this. But you need to then ask, do you do this because you are concerned or because you know that it might have a negative effect on you? And then they will just tell the truth. And they always do. And you can find this on diabetes.uk. I have diabetes myself, right? That's why I keep on talking about it. So, I was diagnosed 2.5 years ago or something. SubhanAllah, very special. So, not that special, a lot of people have it. Yes. Somebody else? That sometimes when I speak, like in the evening, for example, I've been teaching a lot these days, right? I teach about 38 hours a week teaching. And then there is the half of it of preparation, so that's about a 60-hour work week. And then sometimes at the end, like this now, today it's not as much, then sometimes I really need to look for my words. And that's when I know that I need my medication. Because then you start, your concentration, all of a sudden it's not the same. I had this once when we were talking about it, you remember? I didn't know anymore. I wasn't able to concentrate. It's kind of funny. Okay, are there any other questions? No questions? No? Okay. MashaAllah. Now we come to Kitab al-Salah. To Kitab al-Salah. Very, very special. We say the Salah, the Muslim who says that praying is not obligatory is a kafir. And kafir is not an insult, by the way. It just means a non-Muslim. So today people have turned it into a very bad word, like an insult. And that's because ISIS uses it in a very strange way. But kafir in reality comes from the Arabic, a farmer. Kafir in Arabic means farmer, like in Surah Al-Hadid. Let us have a look. Surah Al-Hadid. Surah 56. Bismillah. Let us have a look. Then, Bismillah. Surah Al-Rahman. Oh, no, not 56. I'm sorry, it's not 56. What is Surah? What is the number of the Surah? Somebody knows? 57. Yes. So here, Bismillah. It's right before that one. And then he says, أعجب الكفار نباته. You hear the word kuffar, right? And he says, with which it brings forth delight to the hearts of the tillers. What is tillers?
Someone who tills the field.
Yeah, a farmer. So you see that the word kuffar here is a tiller. Why is a kafir called a tiller, a farmer? Is because they plow the earth. And when you plow the earth, the upper surface of the earth becomes the lower surface of the earth. So it's like you are covering something. You are covering that which is apparent by that which is not apparent. And believing in a God is something very apparent. It's something very normal. Not to believe in a creator. So the kafir actually means he who exchanges that which is apparent for that which is not apparent. And then if a kafir now understands this, he won't take it as an insult because he says yes. He might say no, it's this belief is apparent, right? So anyway, is that clear? So every Muslim who says praying is not obligatory is a kafir. But not every Muslim who doesn't pray is a kafir. Okay? So we from Ahl Sunnah, we say as long as someone affirms that an obligatory action is obligatory and he doesn't do it, he's a Muslim. And someone confirming that an action which is obligatory, and someone doing the obligatory action and says it's not obligatory is also a kafir. So someone praying and he says praying is not obligatory, even though he's doing it, he's removed out of the deen. And if he doesn't do it and says it's obligatory, he's still in the deen. Okay? So this is why the Prophet ﷺ has said that the difference between us and them is prayer. Because if you have no prayer, then what is left of your Islam? We really downgraded what it means to be practicing Muslim, isn't it? Like now when people want to get married, I'm going to get married. Yeah, because he's really a practicing brother or a practicing sister. What do they mean? Yeah, he prays. Is this now what we define, what we say or use to define whether someone is a practicing Muslim, that he prays? That's really downgrading, because the Prophet ﷺ also said at the end of times, you will find nobody praying. It's the last thing which will disappear from this ummah, is prayer. Right before the end of times. And look, from the 1,700,000,000 Muslims, how many pray? You have Muslim families, you know. How many people pray? How many people care even about Islam? The only thing they still care about is that they get angry when you say that they are not Muslim. That's the only thing which is very often left from somebody's Islam. You can't say this, I'm a Muslim, but what is it? What is the definition of a Muslim? It is not because you call yourself a Muslim that you're a Muslim. It's when you know what it entails to be a Muslim and you choose for that you are a Muslim. Anyway, let us continue. The Salah, 5 times a day. Then we're not going to talk about the prayer times. We did that. That's where I got lost with my absent mind. And you remember? Yes. Okay.
We're meant to forget that bit, aren't we?
Excuse me?
We're meant to forget that part of the lesson, aren't we?
Yes. Yes. Okay. We're almost finished, inshallah. So, okay. Allah, going to this chapter here, inshallah. Any questions? No questions? Okay. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for your patience with me. And for you being here every Thursday, instead of just being at home and laying on the sofa and watching The Messiah on Netflix.
What is that?
What is that?
Yeah.
You don't know it.
I've seen the advertisement.
It's the talk of the day.
Is it?
Yes. It's the talk of the day. Like people they I don't know what it is. Like some of them say if you even but like look at it, you will follow Dajjal when Dajjal comes. No, people say this. Like if you do this, the devils will come into your house and into your heart. And well, I'm not saying it's not a loss of time, but I really don't believe that when you look at it that you become a hypocrite or a kafir or that you will believe in Dajjal when he appears. I don't believe that. I believe that the story is really forged and that it's really fake and that there is misinformation and destruction of aqidah. When you really look at it, I believe that. So I would not advise anybody to look at it because of that reason. Exactly like you shouldn't let your child watch a cartoon where God appears with a long white beard and with and a stick. You wouldn't do this because this will affect its aqidah. But I don't believe that that when you watch it that you will eventually follow the Dajjal. I really don't believe this. So anyway, why did I mention Netflix? Well, not because I'm sponsored, but because a lot of people would now be sitting, watching something on Netflix, right? And here you are saying, you know what, we're just going, even if we're tired. We came from our jobs, we could sit and eat on time and, lay down. Do you know the reward for what you're doing is so immense? SubhanAllah. The Prophet ﷺ said when someone goes to the mosque or to a place to learn one thing, in a narration it's one ayah or the explanation of an ayah, which we are doing, is better for him or her, when he or she returns home, than to return with a fat camel. Now, it is better for you. And if now we say, what can I do with a fat camel? Well, in this dunya, nothing. Or, subhanAllah.
Still eat it.
Excuse me?
Still eat it.
Our scholar said, like, now we are going immediately to eating. Our scholar said, no, these are the camels which will be given to you in the hereafter, on which you will ride to the place where you are allowed to look at Allah. You see? So if you go back home now, you're going back home with a camel, an invisible one, right? And don't tell people like, look, I'm with a camel, because then you're going to psychiatry. So, but now you come back with the camel. And he said, if you learn two things, it's like you coming back with two camels. Three things with three camels. And so now the scholar, the Sahaba were very happy. They said, Ya Rasulullah. He said, who would like to go back home with a camel? He said, me, Ya Rasulullah. He said that you learn one verse or understand one verse is better for you than what? To return with one camel. So this is also why next time when you sit in your car and maybe you don't have, or you have a Bugatti or a Lamborghini or a McLaren, Ferrari or a Porsche, whatever, and you sit in your Skoda from 1998 and you look at that beautiful car, or on a reality show where they all have these latest Land Rovers and Rovers. So you look at it, you know that you coming to the mosque and returning home is better than what they have. And you should believe in this. So very often it's like a story. It's not a story, it's true. You see, like when the Prophet tells you something, alayhi salatu wasalam, you should be more sure of this than the fact that you are alive. You see that? And the other reward is the Prophet ﷺ said, when someone leaves his or her house to study the deen, he will be on Allah's path until he comes back. And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man salaka tariqan yaltamisu bihi or fihi ilma, sahhala Allahu lahu bihi tariqan ila al-jannah." If someone is on a path of acquiring knowledge, studying, then Allah will facilitate for him or her the way to paradise. This is where you are. So, wallahi, it's a blessing that you still want to know your deen. In a time where everybody wants to know about dunya. Like, even if you came tired and like, should I go, shouldn't I go? The fact that you come is like amazing. For me, that's a miracle. Knowledge is dying, students are dying, scholars are dying. You know, like you should, when you share a picture of yourself, you have 150 likes. When you share a hadith, they might share it twice. A picture of food, Muslims today, picture of new food, oh mashallah, a cake in the form of the Kaaba. It goes viral. Now, a cake in the form of the Kaaba, viral. And in that Kaaba, now, you have, anyway, I'm exaggerating. So, it goes viral. You share a hadith, nobody shares it. So, knowledge is dying. Muslims are no longer interested, a lot of them. So, when you are interested in this, wallahi, I can say you should really be thankful and happy and thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say. Remember the wrong translation here. I am writing a book in which I point out all the wrong translations. And there are many. And this was just one of them. Did you see how evil it was? Oh, you weren't there. You were there, right? You were. So inshallah, make dua, inshallah, that Allah blesses our time and that we may use time well. That's it, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan wa barakallahu feekum. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wa akhiru da'wan alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. If there are questions, you can ask them, of course. Yes.
It was just going to the previous section.
Yes.
It was just, I think you clarified it, but I just want to double check. So, things that are not permanent, like Botox, lip
Yes.
fillers, fake eyelashes, technically they are
Yes.
acceptable,
Yes.
but it's a path going down the wrong, it's a slippery slope.
The thing is that some of these things which are meant to beautify or accentuate beauty is then also publicly exposed, if you understand what I mean. So the act itself wouldn't be impermissible, but what one does with it can turn it impermissible, if you understand what I mean. Yeah. But yeah.
Yes, such things like that, for instance, they draw attention because they look quite odd.
Odd, or in this time it doesn't look odd anymore actually. But it draws attention because it's accentuating beauty which one cannot remove. So it is not wrong for one to beautify himself or herself, but sometimes beauty should also be discreet, like accentuating the beauty. There is a certain beauty from the wife towards the husband alone, or from the husband to the wife alone, and so much more. So there are some things which one needs to take into account. But stretching the skin, for example, so it's not a real facelift, but it's with ultra this and that wouldn't be haram, for example. That's no problem. Botox wouldn't be haram unless it is proven that it deforms the body, because what now happens, I'm with you right away, a lot of people that put Botox in their lips, eventually their lips either they collapse, they fall down. What if you have no money anymore? then that Donald Duck thing will go away. I'm not saying that everybody that does it looks like Donald Duck, so I'm not trying to say this about fikum. But a problem if someone does it and hasn't got the money anymore, then you will really see it. And a lot of these things is when you grow old, they will have transformed your face. Even the excessive usage of makeup, for example, will eventually affect your skin, because your skin can't breathe properly, and so much more, and the sunlight and so forth. So to come back, no, it is not wrong. Like even, for example, sharpening the what? How do we call this? The jawline, for example, is something which a lot of people do. That is not haram. That, for example, wouldn't be haram on itself. What is the reason why one does it? Where does one show him or herself with it? What is the intention behind it? Why isn't it haram? Because it is not transforming the body. Do you understand what I mean? It's not permanent, because after 6 months or a year, it depends how much they put in your under your skin, it will come back, and then you need to do it again, and you go back and you do it again. But eventually, what I have seen is that people will not stop there. It becomes an addiction. it becomes something one will like to do from a surgical point of view. You know, somebody will eventually, when they grow older, they got so used to their other face that they say, well, now I'm just a surgeon is the only one who can help me. So that's the reason. So there's a difference between it being haram or it leading to something that might be haram. Is difference clear? So I would definitely say it's makruh. It's disliked. Yes. Is that clear? So now it's the same question with a non-permanent tattoo, for example. Am I allowed? Well, it all depends what it is. If you have sticker, like we had when we were small, right? You put some water on it, go like this, take it off. Well, it wouldn't be haram, but our scholar says don't let your children do it because they will get used to it. You know, so that's it. But anyway, no, the jawline and even the nose without touching the bone, without removing the skin, and someone says, I feel not very comfortable because it's a bit too big and you don't feel discomfort and you feel insecure about yourself, not because of the people but because of the way it looks, then you are allowed to do things which do not alter the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is that clear? So that's it. Okay. Yes.
I think you clarified it. So I think when you were talking about people like sort of items which are permissible but lead down a slippery slope.
Yes.
It's not just about the act the individual carries out with that. It's also the intention why the individual is doing it.
Yes.
So for example, makeup's a really good example to use in today's society, where a lot of females will feel like insecure, which is why they wear makeup. So they may not carry out necessary actions.
Yes.
From that, but it also depends on the intent, whether it's 100% coming from a concept of security or a concept of I want to look decent in society or attractive.
Now makeup is another thing, like the nose was another thing, and the makeup is another thing, because the standards that we are creating today are not natural ones. You see, so eventually you are dragging everybody into that hype, and then that which is not necessary becomes necessary. You understand what I mean? Like now the younger girls, like between 12 and 16, they put so much makeup on their faces that they want to look like a photoshopped picture. Like their face should be the same face they have when they use their filter. You understand what I mean? And at the end, nobody feels well in their skin.
I think we were talking about this at the moment. It's the concept of how females are having makeup. It's actually, you could almost say, in drag queens, like how they do it. They follow that as a standard to look like that, but they no longer look like females.
No, exactly. Yeah, so you have many things going on today. But what our scholar said is that one of the things that women would wear in the time of the Prophet ﷺ would, for example, be the eyeliner, the kohol, they would wear it. So that wouldn't be a problem and so forth. So it all depends on how, what, why, when, who, with whom. So makeup on itself is not haram, if you understand what I mean. So then the problem is we are going, if you want, we can have an entire class about the fiqh of not of makeup. Do we say anesthetics? No, we don't say that. No. Aesthetics. Yes. Not
because it's interesting.
Anesthetics. That would be a nice one, isn't it?
Because it's like when you look at brothers with haircuts, for instance,
yes.
Shaving this and keeping it long, or how they design the beards and etc. It's probably the male equivalent of.
The problem is, men are so focused on what women do, while in reality they have no authority whatsoever over any woman, not to talk about them, not to describe them. If you want to talk about actions, that's no problem. But the problem is they themselves do so many wrong things. I'm sorry. Like if you, I was a counselor, right? I still am, but I was counseling at universities here in London. If you look at the amount of brothers who are addicted to what you can find on a screen, okay, I don't want to pronounce the name in the mosque. So I think it's about 85%. I mean, and then because of their frustration, on the one hand, you are looking at the most filthy haram, And then, oh, the sister isn't wearing her hijab correctly. I mean, does that make sense? So very often the people that want to be the most pious might actually be hiding so many different things. So it is not even for you to say she wears the hijab correctly or not even she wears the hijab or she doesn't. It's nobody's business. You understand what I mean? We shouldn't be judging people. But now the focus is always on women. Oh, and what? And you know, this sister, she wears trousers. Okay. And so now what? Is it your sister? Is it your wife? And no. What is the ruling of Islam about sisters with trousers, brother? I said, brother, are there more important things for the moment? So you're escaping the question. So that means that people, they come to you with all their illnesses. And you know what the problem is? And I said this more than once. Brothers pray in trousers which make their prayers invalid. You know, I might sometimes wear jeans, or I have this trouser here. You see this? That's a normal trouser. I'm not allowed to pray in this because it accentuates parts which should be covered. So brothers are talking about the sisters, but when the sisters pray, they cover themselves. They put it over their jeans or whatever. They are covered when they pray. But the brothers, they don't cover themselves. So why is the focus so much on women? I told you the story, somebody who visited a brother, and he came back and said, brother, astaghfirullah, you didn't hide the comb of your wife. I was present. I said, excuse me? He said, you didn't hide the comb of your wife. He told the brother. Now everybody who goes to the bathroom, he knows the color of the hair of your wife. How sick is this? He said, yes, we Muslims, we should protect our females. I said, brother, did you inspect the brush and look for the color? He says, not only that, it went worse. He said, and there was perfume. Now we know which perfume she uses. I said, Ya Rabbi. And then I knew, well, you actually have to hide it. Because you have people with sick minds like that coming to your bathroom.
Because the question is, why is he thinking that?
Yes, why do you think this?
His mind is sick.
And you know, the thing is, the more you accentuate something, the more it becomes interesting. You understand what I mean? Like the tree was forbidden for Adam, all of a sudden that tree became important, not the other ones. So now, over accentuating things is not good. Like the Messiahs. Why did Muslims make a story about it? All of a sudden, all the internet. Dajjal on Netflix. Now, so many people, because of this, started watching it. And if you would have spoken about it, you might not even have seen it. You see? So anyway, so always, you know, the concentration on what women do and what they shouldn't do and why are they not dressed like this and are they dressed like that. The men, a lot of men are not dressed in a proper way.
Are you going to cover that later?
What? Which one?
Men how to dress when they pray.
Yes, of course. Of course I will. I believe after seeing everything that the outward appearance is a part of Islam, but it doesn't reflect who you truly are on the inside. You understand what I mean? So I'm not saying dress is not a part of Islam, dressing, a certain way of dressing. But I'm also saying that you can very well, and people might hate me for this, but I say this everywhere and I don't care. Sometimes you can have a sister without hijab that is respectful towards herself, that behaves herself, that a man cannot even come near to, who cries, who loves Allah, who loves the Quran, but who is pushed away by people, and even said you are not allowed to say that you love Allah because you are not covered. But maybe she doesn't gossip. I'm not saying it's not important, but I'm saying something different. And very often people try to read in between the lines. So I'm not saying don't wear. What I'm saying is we are in a time where everybody individually tries to hold on to his or her religion. So if you see somebody like who doesn't cover herself, but she has an interest in tajweed or whatever, or she says, I love Allah and His Messenger, stop, humiliating people. Because maybe the heart you have, which is filled with greed and discontentment with Allah's decree, might be worse than what? Than a woman not covering her hair. So it is, but the problem is that the social pressure is so high. It's like we're all lawyers and witnesses, and that this is court. We have one lawyer, we have one witness, we have one judge, Allah. And for the rest, done. We have no authority whatsoever to judge people. Is that clear? Alhamdulillah. And to all the women that do wear the hijab, mashallah, you are very courageous. Yani, that you do it, mashallah, and that you hold on to it in difficult times. Yani, it is definitely worth, mashallah, tabarak wa ta'ala, to mention, yani, that these women are courageous and that they are, inshallah, looking towards a bright future in the hereafter and so much more. But I think that we need a well-balanced view upon this. وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين.